So yesterday, we were doing the bottom of the comprehension page on the front, talking about the different companies here in Minnesota that helped out during World War II. Now on the backside, number 6 says name 2 policies that helped ease the shortage of farm workers. So page 348. Why do you think there was a shortage of farm workers? What's going on, Sarah? All the farmers went off to become soldiers, right? So there's a shortage of them. So what did we do to make up for all these farmers that aren't there working the farms anymore?
Agriculture. Minnesota's farmers increased production during the war, but a shortage of farm laborers made the work difficult. Many farm men had gone off to war, and thousands of rural men and women had taken high-paying defense jobs in the cities. The U.S. government tried to ease the shortage by excusing farm workers from military service. The state government also urged women, children, and the elderly to help out more with farm work.
So just in those last 2 sentences, they have 2 things that the government did. Next paragraph tells us a third one.
The shortage was so severe that the U.S. government decided to bring in a new group of people to help with farm production and other needed tasks. German and Italian soldiers who had been captured by the Allies. Between 1943 and 1945, several thousand German and Italian prisoners of war lived in camps in Minnesota and were put to work. Sometimes they labored alongside workers who had immigrated to the United States from countries such as Mexico, Jamaica, and Barbados.
So there are 3 different things that they talked about that the U.S. government put into place. Who can tell me one of them? Sarah? Yeah. Instead of just having the prisoners of war sitting in the prisoners of war camp and just sitting there do nothing, they put them to work. They said, you know what, you're going to help our farms. What's another thing that they did? Christina? They said, you know what, you don't have to become a soldier because your job is so necessary. We need farmers here. We need people who know how to farm to take care of the farms. So if you're a farmer, you don't have to go and become a soldier. What's a third thing they did, Adeline?
They used women, children, and elderly to help out with more farm work.
People that weren't able to go be soldiers, they said, hey, let's encourage you to help with the farms. So the women, the children, and the elderly, you might not be able to be a soldier, but you can still work. You've got good things you can do. Number 7 says, how were Minnesota's iron ore and timber industries affected by the war? So remember, we learned about flour. Flour's agriculture, the farms. We just talked about that. Then the other 2 industries we learned about was the lumber and the iron ore industries. So let's see how they were affected by the war.
Iron ore and timber. World War II put new demands on Minnesota's iron ore and timber industries. Many mines on the Iron Range had shut down during the Great Depression. When the United States began preparing for war in 1939, everything changed. Mines on the Mesabi, Vermilion, and Cuyuna ranges resumed full-time production. These mines supplied millions of tons of iron ore that was made into guns, tanks, bombs, and ships. Minnesota's timber industry had a hard time keeping up with increased demand for lumber and paper products. In November of 1943, officials estimated that the state needed about 4,000 more loggers. The following year, lumber companies, like farms, began employing prisoners of war, mainly Germans.
So what happened to the lumber and iron ore industries? Did they dry up? Did they just go away? Couldn't handle it? What happened to them, Michael? They needed more people, right? They got so big that they needed even more. Think about the iron ore. That's used to make steel. They need steel for all of the tanks and the ammunition and the weapons and all of that stuff that the military needs. All of a sudden they need so much more. During the Great Depression, people weren't buying stuff, so they didn't need a lot of it, and mines were closing up. Now all the mines opened back up because it was in high demand. The lumber industry, the timber industry, people needed more wood, they're building things. So that really grew. So both of those industries expanded during the war. Remember when we said the Great Depression didn't just end with the New Deal, it ended with World War II. Look at all of these jobs that are opening up. Look at how much money people are now able to make because of these jobs that weren't there during the Great Depression. While World War II was happening, think about in World War I, people were having to conserve how much wheat they were using so they could send it over to France, right? So that's still happening during World War II. There are shortages of things. When we had COVID happen, there were shortages of toilet paper, right? There were signs up in the stores saying you can only limit one per customer. And today, sometimes when the bird flu kicks up and there's lots of chickens that get sick, there's a limited amount of eggs you can buy at the store, and you'll see signs, limit 2 cartons per customer, right? So we've experienced some shortages in our lifetime. It's not the same as the shortages they experienced during World War II. There was a lot of shortage. So let's see, number 8 says what were examples of shortages they had and what were the solutions that they had with that. So listen to the first one, it's going to be a type of food shortage.
Making sacrifices. In the first few months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, life seemed to go on as usual for many Minnesotans. By the spring of 1942, however, things were changing. The U.S. government started a system of rationing to limit the amount of certain items that people could buy. These items were needed for soldiers. Sugar was one of the first foods to be rationed. Some people, like William Cummings, stocked up on sugar before the rationing took effect. Others, including Hildred Long, found they could make do with less. "I bought some more sugar tonight," she wrote in a letter to Frank. "If I don't begin using it, I will have all my containers full, and people will begin accusing me of hoarding."
So what's an example of a food shortage? Harper? Sugar. That was the first big shortage that they experienced. What was the solution? Bridget?
They stocked up on sugar.
Some people kind of stockpiled it. What was the government solution? What did the government do? What big program was talked about, Adeline?
They rationed the limit.
They had a rationing system. So I was talking about, now in the stores you might see limit 1 or 2 carton of eggs per customer. Well, I can buy my eggs, and then tomorrow I can go back and buy more. And then Mr. Gambino can go buy more to have in our house. But back then, it was a more serious shortage, so they had more serious rationing. They got ration cards. So let's see how these ration cards were used.
In early 1943, the U.S. government announced that the combined armed forces of the United States and the rest of the Allies needed 25% of all the food the nation produced. The government began rationing a wide variety of foods. These included meat, milk, eggs, soups, juices, and almost every kind of canned, dried, or frozen fruit and vegetable. All foods were assigned point values, and each person got a certain number of points. People used government-issued stamps printed with different point values to buy rationed foods. Many Minnesotans, including Hildred Long, struggled at first with the rationing system. "We're to have only 48 points for a canned food rationing," she wrote, with number 2 canned peas counting 16 or 18 points. Other foods accordingly, fruits more and soups and baby foods less. It will amount to about a can a week per person.
So they would get ration cards for the family. Your family is this, I have 5 people in my family, so I have this many ration points assigned to my family. And it would all be on a card. And I would go to the grocery store And the grocery store would have a points assigned to all the different foods in the store. And here she said, we're to have only 48 points for our canned food rationing. I don't know if that was for a week or if that was for a month. I'm not sure exactly how long each card lasted for, but they had to plan it out. Well, if a can of peas is 16 points, and I only have so many points, how many cans of peas can I buy to put in my pantry? Right, so they had to really limit what they were buying. Adeline?
What are we supposed to write in examples of shortage?
For what? Because we talked about the foods, we talked about sugar. So we talked about sugar, so you could write sugar in there. You could write any of these other foods that they talked about being
Oh, okay.
in short supply. So we've only done the top part of the table so far.
Oh.
We've only done the foods part. We haven't done the bottom part. We haven't talked about consumer goods and raw materials. So we're still on the foods. Understanding what the ration system was. It was serious, right? There wasn't much that, not a lot of wiggle room. Whereas now, they don't know how many times I go through. I could go to 4 different stores if I need to get eggs, and the eggs are being limited. But if I have to show my card, they'll know if I've already bought all the eggs I can buy. Another way was by, another solution they had was the Victory Gardens. Victory Gardens were, hey, you know what, we can only buy so much food at the grocery store. Instead of having to buy their peas, how about we grow our own garden and grow our own peas, and then we can freeze our peas to have in the wintertime, so we don't need the cans of peas. We'll be able to get it out of our freezer, right? Or we want to be able to have salad at night, but we can't afford it with our ration card. Let's grow our own lettuce, grow our own tomatoes, so we can grow our own food. So Victory Gardens was a huge solution that people came up with. The next paragraph talks about the consumer goods and raw materials. So listen to this. Other consumer goods, such as safety pins, refrigerators, cars, and tires, became hard or impossible to find. Raw materials, such as copper, brass, steel, and rubber, were being used instead to make military hardware instead of everyday items. So it was hard to find because it was all going towards what the military needed. The military also needed gasoline to power tanks, trucks, and planes, so it was rationed as well. Instead of driving cars, so this would be a solution if the shortage was the gasoline, here would be a solution. Minnesotans walked or relied on public buses, trains, and trolleys. People learned to conserve, reuse, and repair the things they needed. So if it was stuff that is in short supply, they could figure out a different way to repurpose it, or they could patch it up so they could use it for a longer period of time. So that reduce, reuse, recycle, right, that really came about during World War II when there was huge shortages. So you could take any of these examples and talk about a solution to it. Big one would be gasoline. There's a shortage because all the military equipment machines need it. So maybe we don't drive as much. Maybe we take our bike, or we walk, or we carpool, or we take the bus, right? So they found other solutions to that. And then they're also talking about war bonds, which we learned about from World War I. War bonds are a big way that people could support the country, giving them money, giving the military that money, and then knowing when the war is done, we'll get our money back with those war bonds. All right, joining the fight. How did different groups participate in the military? Name at least 2 ways that these different groups we're going to hear about participated. So it's not just, oh, we became a soldier. We're gonna talk about a specific group of people. What did they do when they were in the military? So, just looking at the time if we wanna listen to that. Let's listen to this one.
Joining the fight. More than 300,000 Minnesotans, mostly men, but women too, served in the Army Air Forces, the Navy, the Marines, or the Coast Guard during World War II. Many people volunteered. Many men were also drafted by the government to serve in the military. They served in Europe, Africa, the Pacific region, and throughout the United States. Those who served were from every part of the state and from every racial and ethnic background, although most were European American males.
Listen to the difference.
Hundreds of Dakota and Ojibwe served in the military, in part because of the respect for military service in Dakota and Ojibwe society. Some aided the war effort as code talkers. These were American Indians recruited by the Army to create codes in their native languages. The codes, which were difficult or impossible for enemies to understand, were used to communicate battle strategies.
So we had a couple of History Day projects about the code talkers, right? So this is the Dakota and the Ojibwe. A big way that they were able to help with the military was using their language to make up codes, because not many people know Dakota and Ojibwe language to begin with, and then having to break that code became super hard. So the Dakota and the Ojibwe, a big way they participated in the military was with that code talking. Let's hear about some more groups.
In 1942, the U.S. military offered new service opportunities for women.
Women.
Though women weren't allowed to fight in battle, they could now serve in new female military divisions. The Army created the Women's Army Corps, WAC, and the Women Air Force Service Pilots, WASP. The Navy began a division called the Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service, WAVES. Anne Bosanko, a sophomore at the University of Minnesota, volunteered. She said, "I felt I could do some good in the Army, and it certainly will do me good. Think of the interesting people I'll meet and the places I'll see."
There's another group.
African Americans during this time continued to face discrimination in both military and civilian life. Men serving in the military were assigned to segregated or separate units, which were nearly always commanded by European Americans. They were also limited to performing mainly lower-skilled jobs.
So we talked about the Dakota and Ojibwe. Then we heard about the women and the different groups that the women can join in the military. Even though they can't be a full-on soldier, they had roles that they could play. And then we have the African Americans. They were still segregated because this is the 1940s. It's before Martin Luther King Jr., right? So there's still that segregation, but they were able to join full-on African American divisions and still be able to participate. Adeline.
So one of them, could you just write women to join different groups?
Yes. All right, number 10, let's see how well we know our history. What military action led to the end of the war with Japan? So Germany surrenders in May of 1945. What happens to make Japan surrender? Nolan.
There's 2 atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, and those are 2 cities in Japan. So if we look at, I just passed it. This picture, we can see the mushroom cloud from when one of those bombs dropped. So you can see how big this bomb was. It wasn't just a small bomb that blew up a building. This devastated an entire city. It obliterated it. It was gone. And then there's radiation poisoning that leaked out to the people living around the city. So let's listen to what happened. Oops, wrong one. Maybe.
This mushroom cloud came from the atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki, Japan, on August 9, 1945. 3 days earlier, the United States had dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. Together, the 2 bombings killed 120,000 people. Many thousands more died later of radiation poisoning.
So the bombs are dropped on 2 separate days. Okay. but they totally destroyed the cities, the entire city. Big to do, big deal. All right. Number 11 says, what was the role of the Military Intelligence Service Language School and why was it located in Minnesota? We're going to talk about that at the start of class tomorrow. Okay, so we will come back to that tomorrow. It is time for us to get ready for the award ceremony. So if you're watching at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.